on the Maxusthebeast show, we have a very mixed experience when it comes to Tycoon games, seeing as the last one I played wasn't that great. And I definitely, though, can enjoy games where I have to micromanage things, or manage what's going on at any given time, especially with games like Tabs. Although, games like Lunch Truck Tycoon, yeah, let's not talk about that anymore. And yet, there comes a time where one of these types of games is released, and it makes me think about the genre itself. And this such game is Esports Life Tycoon. So, let's begin. Hey, what's going on, geeks? Maxusthebeast is here, and welcome back to Out of the Blue Reviews. Now today, we are checking out the game Esports Life Tycoon, obviously. This game was released this past Wednesday, and I must say, I was not expecting it. The developers behind this game made YouTuber's Life, which was a simulation game that was trying to replicate the experience of being a full-time YouTuber, starting out from high school days, leading into a solo career. It had features similar to games like The Sims, where your character could get married, you can customize your character, and you had a selection of different types of content you can make, whether that be music, videos, gaming, vlogs, etc. And there was even a cooking option too. But I played 65 hours of YouTuber's Life, and I had no idea that they were even making another game. The developers of the game apparently did another attempt of this back in 2015 with a game called Esports Tycoon, which got fairly mixed reviews because it was not very good. However, they decided to try to reboot it using the same mechanics after their success with YouTuber's Life. They used the same sort of mechanic type thing with YouTuber's Life with Esports Life Tycoon, making it very different. So, enough staring at the menu, let's show off some gameplay. Like all my reviews, we're going to be going over graphics, gameplay, features, and all that stuff. So, let's start out with graphics. The game looks very cartoonish, but that is the art style. YouTuber's Life had a very similar look to it, and it is clear that some of the sprites and models have been reused. However, the animations, while the game is still in very early access, still look pretty solid. Although there are issues sometimes with clipping, as you might see in a few minutes. I'll point it out when it happens. But the game looks pretty okay, although some of the facial expressions for characters can be questionable. I get that it's the art style, but sometimes they look unsettling. Oh, there it is. You see, when the characters sit down in gaming chairs, for some reason their bodies tend to clip through either the backs of chairs sometimes or the armrests, which doesn't look very realistic. And again, that could be forgiven because it is only a handful of days into Steam Early Access, while YouTuber's Life is a fully released game. However, it's still kind of weird to look at. But models look pretty good, and the animations, for the most part, look realistic. You can see characters moving their mice around or clicking on their keyboards. Their monitor screens light up and TV screens do as well. It looks realistic in some ways. Again, clipping is an issue, not just with gaming chairs, but occasionally characters will clip through other things, such as, well, I wouldn't really call it clipping, but the teleporting between workstations is kind of annoying. As you can see, they just walk away from one thing and instantly pop over to another. Perhaps it's just a style of game, but it still kind of gets on my nerves. Now then, let's talk about gameplay. The game plays interestingly. You have to manage energy constantly, and each task that you do requires a lot of it. If you want to train your players to get them better at the game they're playing, well, it's going to cost a lot of energy. And while you can upgrade your characters or your team's lounging area to be able to regenerate energy faster, and you can also upgrade the bedroom so that when the day ends, your characters start off, or your team starts off, with more energy when the new day arrives. However, it's still a kind of tedious process to constantly deal with energy. There is a bar at the top right corner of the screen that has a sun and a moon, which represents daytime. And once the bar eventually runs out and depletes at the moon side, that is the end of the day, where all characters will cease what they're doing, go to bed, and you see here, they regain a bit of energy, depending on where they left off. Upgrading lounging stations and bedrooms will increase the amount of energy you either leave off with or start the day with. Although you get a generous amount of energy back by going to sleep. However, you can't tell your team to go to sleep until nighttime. Since this is Esports Tycoon, there is a tier list of tiers you play in from bronze all the way to pro, and of course you're going to be playing against other esports teams. And as such, you need to get your team ready to play before a match. And the first step of getting your team ready is scouting, which there'll be a pop-up before every prep session where you are instantly forced into scouting, which reveals certain attributes about the opposing team, like their formation, their favorite heroes, because for now the only esport, or the only game genre that they play are MOBAs. So you learn their favorite heroes. And finally you can also learn their team's skill level, which you can train to match, or even top. Which is a preferable option, however, because of the constant energy tax, it's oftentimes not plausible, or not even possible, to meet levels. Carrying on. You can tell your players to train by clicking on the gaming setups where they would go and train, and once they reach a certain area, a little 2 will pop up, meaning that they've reached rank 2 of training. Now there are in total 5 current training ranges for at least the gameplay section I'm at, which are 0, which is no training whatsoever, 2 with brief training, 5 with medium training, 8 with long training, and a full-on 15 if you spend a lot of time training. However, when you first start the game, 8 is going to be incredibly hard to get, because typically you have like a day to prepare for games, and 15 is absolutely impossible because of the constant rush back and forth between the couch and the gaming session. Your team also has a little hype booth, which you can see the camera and the sponsored poster type things behind them on stands. This builds up hype for a game, and regardless if you win or lose, depending on how high the hype was for the game, you'll gain followers and gain fans. You can also gain fans by responding positively to emails from fans, like occasionally teammates. Your team will be disrespectful to a fan, and the fan will send you an angry email saying, "One of your team players said something very rude to me. And if you show that you do not tolerate rudeness from your players, your fans will support you, and you'll gain more fans due to your respectfulness. There's also sponsors for your teams, and occasionally, once in a blue moon, you'll have a sponsored event. And if you sacrifice in-game hours, you'll have the opportunity to please your sponsor, and from being there, you'll gain a little bit of fame. From where I was, I gained 2 full bars of hype from going to that sponsored event. And if you keep going to sponsored events, your sponsor will keep paying you. And your favor with that sponsor will keep going up. And at the end of every match, depending on your sponsor and how pleased your sponsor is with you, your sponsor will pay you bonus. And you'll get an even higher bonus if you meet the sponsor's requirement by the end of the sponsorship period, which typically lasts for a full-on game season. And what that means is that each sponsor has a requirement for bonus money. This could be maintaining a spot on the ranking board, or getting higher than you were previously, and in some cases even progressing from bronze tier, let's say, to silver tier. So you're going to want to make sure that you look at what you're about to sign up for before you accept a sponsorship, just in case they have a goal that you think is unreasonable at the moment. Now, occasionally, you'll have to replace a team member, because sometimes they'll quit, sometimes they'll get injured and have to be taken out for a few days or sometimes weeks. And so you'll have to hire a replacement player. So you get to have meetings with various players, and you can select them to fill a spot. It's kind of convoluted, but let's just show you how this works. So you negotiate signing, but if you already have one going, you can't negotiate more than one person. So you just gotta wait until you get the heads up that people were there. Also, at the end of every match, you get level ups, where characters can upgrade their MOBA heroes and their skills in game. So you can upgrade their defense, their dodge, their damage, and their attack. Which means that you can build your team however you really want. And there's also the sponsorship event. So make sure you always attend these things. And eventually, your hired player will arrive where you can go to negotiation. This little tutorial menu shows what's going on. I'll just shut up and let it do its thing. So as you can see, you get to choose what role you want your person to be. You can choose their wages, their buyout clauses, all that stuff. And they can consider, change it, and accept it, of course, or reject it. But in this case, this player accepted to sign on with Vault-Tec, prepared for the future. Another important thing to manage are emails. But more importantly than emails is your team's chemistry, which is trying to I'm booting into. This will determine your team's formation. And a lot of times it is best to either counter it or meet it with your opponents. As you can see, give it a second. You can see on the corner here with saying Mick Vintage, their team formation is up diagonal. And their team skill level is 2. With extra scouting, I can also reveal their favorite heroes. But I typically forget about that. But with basic chemistry leveled up to 1, you're going diagonal down. If you keep going, you're going to be going horizontal to the right. But there is no way if you only have an hour for your next match deadline, there's no way in heck you're going to be able to reach the same mark as your opponent. But there is one important thing about this. This is Esports Tycoon, where, sure, micromanaging is important, but it's not fun. What's more important are the esports themselves. The esports themselves, the actual games, have two ways of solution. You can either click resolve match, and it'll automatically play through the match for you. You won't get to see anything going on. It'll just skip to the results. But before you can continue to the results, it shows you a probability of your chances of winning. And depending on how high your team chemistry is, or how high your team's training is, will determine your stats. However, an exact percentage will not be available unless you go through all 3 stages of scouting, which, if you were interested in percentages, is important. And next is the more exciting alternative. There is the play match button, which gives you control over what goes on. Allow me to show you. First, you have a hero ban section, where you get to ban heroes that you yourself and your opponents cannot use. And if you do all your scouting, you get to see your opponent's favorite heroes as well. If you don't, you're just kind of guessing and picking random heroes that they cannot use. And they can do the same. And if they do all their scouting, they can pick your team's favorites to ban, which is not very fun. And after the ban, you get to choose your heroes. By choosing the favorite heroes, you have a higher chance of success, obviously. So making sure that your team is locked into the heroes that they're good at is very important. So after you're going back and forth between heroes, between you and your opposition, you finally get to go into the game. First round. It plays sort of like a MOBA, just a bit more luck. You get to choose which lane you want to push, and choose whether you see the thing that looks like a chest and also a helmet. That's your defense and dodge chance. If you prioritize that, your characters will attack less often, but they have a higher chance of defending themselves. But if you push up the target reticle, which stands for attack, your characters will either do more damage or be a bit more aggressive. And oftentimes both. It's important to have a healthy mix. The jungle lane will fight for control of a dragon. But the most important thing to notice is character deaths. When your team dies, or your enemy dies, it does damage to a tower or dragon. And if your team kills a dragon, you gain a plus 20% stat bonus. But if you kill opposition in front of a tower, the tower takes 1 point of damage. And if you kill enough to reduce that tower's damage to nothing, it will break. And at that point, you can start doing damage to the Nexus, or whatever the big glowy thing in the MOBA's called. I'm sorry, I haven't played the MOBA in like 2 years. So I'm kind of out of touch. But some characters have different abilities which will prolong a tower's life. For example, the dog character you see on their right side, which I guess is their technical bottom lane, it has an ability which prevents a tower from taking damage for 1 attack. But afterwards, that ability goes away, it's only used once, and the tower will take damage. No, you don't get bonuses for damaging or destroying towers, but you do get bonuses if you destroy the dragon. These games take a while, and they're kind of suspenseful in parts. But you can also pause them at any time so you can get like a quick overview of what's going on, or you can speed them up. Or if you would prefer to go back to regular normal speed, there's a regular play button for that option too. It's kind of luck of the draw mostly. You get to control basic things like which lane you want to prioritize and which stat, whether defensive or offensive, you want to press. You have slight options, but you don't get to outwardly control your characters. Like, there's no direct controls, there's no 3D models of what's going on in the actual game. Which is okay. It'll be very, very difficult to program a game that has another game, and a detailed MOBA at that, in it. So I can understand why they wouldn't want to do that. But eventually, you win, their Nexus blows up, and you get a nice victory screen. And then you move on to round 2, because it's a best 2 out of 3. Get a nice round screen, and your score goes up, you push next round, and you're going into your second round. But it's, like I said, mostly luck-based. And with the resolve option, it's entirely based on how much training you decide to do, whether you train game skill, or whether you train team chemistry. It all goes down to your stats as far as the resolve match option goes. With this, it's more luck of the draw, although you do have a bit more options, meaning you can turn a game around just choosing to prioritize defensive or offensive stats, whichever you seem fit, or choosing to prioritize various lanes. It's important to concentrate on what's going on. Now then, we talked a lot about gameplay, we talked a lot about graphics. Let's go down to my thoughts. Personally, I'm not typically a big fan of this style of game. While I liked YouTuber's Life, I liked it mostly because it was kind of cool, and also because it played like The Sims. This doesn't play like The Sims. This plays like a manager. And interestingly, it reminds me more of a game called Game Dev Tycoon, which I actually really do like, more than it does of YouTuber's Life, which is actually shamelessly plugged several times within games' character customization menus, where there are several t-shirts and sweatshirts with a YouTuber's Life logo on it. But again, it surprised me with how much I actually ended up enjoying it. I played for a solid 3 hours straight of this game after I first got it, because I saw a trailer, I was interested, and I saw that it was made by the same people who made YouTuber's Life. So, because I enjoyed YouTuber's Life, I was looking forward to this, and for the most part, it did not disappoint. While I don't really know if it's really that great to give this game a super high rating, seeing as it's just out of the gate and still has so much to do, I don't also want to just dump on it either because it doesn't deserve it. It's still a pretty decent game. My main complaints is that I wish it was more like YouTuber's Life, or play a bit more like The Sims rather than this micromanaging type thing with... I'd rather it still have like micromanaging because it is necessary for this type of game. However, it would be kind of cool to have like a Sims type thing where you get to manage each character individually, tell them what to do, so instead of having everybody wasting all your team's energy just by telling them to train, you could have one person train, exhaust themselves or whatever, and other people do various other things. It'd be more beneficial, or rather more convenient and more realistic. Because yeah, you would have players consistently tiring out, you would have players training together for a sense of teamwork and unity. I'm sure that players would also want to train by themselves as well. But all in all, the game is kind of addictive, especially with the actual esport game mode. It's addictive, and I sincerely do feel bad whenever I lose. And with the ranking board, as it is, where you lose, you go down, of course, you win, you go up. It's self-explanatory, as that's how a leaderboard works. But it's fun, but it still has a long way to go. And I would still like to see more animations added for various things, and more realism added, and just a bit more genres to try. Like, sport games would be interesting to see for esports, especially things like, Rocket League nowadays is has a decent following in the esports world. And of course, competitive shooter games like Counter-Strike and Overwatch are still taking the world by storm because of how popular they are. So it'd be interesting to see how they would manage having an FPS game or a sports game or something along the lines of that in their genre menu. Or fighters too, because things like Smash Bros. And Mortal Kombat are definitely things. My biggest complaint with the game goes down to the energy system. It's annoying to keep up with, and I wish there were other ways of regaining energy, like maybe like snacks that players could use, and various things like that. Or have the individual control, so you get to control each person, tell them when to rest, when to do what. Give you the player a bit more freedom of what to do with each person you have on your team, rather than have an entire universal, oh, let's all go training right this very second with no other option, and the energy goes down like nobody's business. And again, there's a lot of systems that I'm not going to be covering here, like team manager, the person, and a lot of the graph menus and stuff like that. But the game itself, would I recommend it? In its current state, it's pretty fun. So I would say yes, I would recommend this game. However, it's only really if you enjoy the micromanaging type of gameplay. And if you don't, that's fine. It's not for everybody. But for what it is, I'm going to give it a solid 7 out of 10. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoy, and I might come back to this game in the future as it updates. Maybe once it gets out of early access, giving you guys a final, oh, this is my final thoughts on this game, Anyway, guys, thanks again for watching, and as always, Maxusthebeast is out.